most negative thoughts are not useful. And when it comes to regret, shame, anxiety, self-doubt, fear, worry, these are typically thoughts that are just wasting our precious time. There's an Indian teacher, a spiritual leader named Sadhguru, and he has tons of content on YouTube and Facebook. He's very interesting, very compelling. And he has this to say. He says that you are not suffering life. You are suffering your memory and your imagination. Therefore, some inner engineering, which is the name of his book, is required. And I thought I would paint the picture of, so over here, just imagine your past. And this is all, it doesn't exist. It only exists as a memory and is subject to interpretation and perception. And two people can look at an event and look at it completely differently. But your individual memory, let's just call this luggage, okay? And it's your past. The parts of the past that are negative are luggage, in my opinion. And the weight of it is something that we don't want to carry and lug around with us. So whether it's unforgiveness, guilt, shame, regret, resentment, self-doubt, we always say we want to let these things go. And then in the future, this is what Sadhguru says is the realm of imagination. So there's memory and there's imagination. And I think of this akin to, what picture are you painting? And sometimes we end up painting the picture that is catastrophizing, that is filled with anxiety, it's filled with worry, it's filled with paranoia, fear, hypervigilance, as Mark Mesidorian likes to say. That's powerful for me. Hypervigilance. It's like when you turn on the TV, what are you waiting to hear when you turn on the news? When you open up the newspaper, when you go to your iPhone, what are you? There's a name for doom scrolling is the name for it, because you know all these bad things are happening and they sell impressions, they sell media hits. So that's future. And then there's this thin place right here, right now, called the present. I saw that Chris Berglund posted to her Facebook feed a quote by Lao Tzu that says, "At the center of your being, you have the answer. You know who you are and you know what you want at the center of your being. You know who you are and what you want. But how do we get to the center of our being? I think we have to minimize living here and living here so we can live here." So a little bit about the past. It's interpretation of a particular event, and Sadhguru calls it the tragedy of perception. The tragedy of perception, meaning that people can look at the exact same physical fact and they can have a different perception around it, such as an election, right? They can have a completely different perception. And let's maybe get out of politics for a minute and just think of things in our past that disturb us. They become a memory of a memory of a memory. They become a story. And we tend to tell ourselves that story or tell it to others. And this morning I realized, there's some stories that I've been telling myself for 50 years, just upon a glimpse of a memory, and then there's an assumption, and then there's, oh yeah, my parents were this, but they weren't that, and I'm making all these assumptions, but I'm attached to these stories, and these thoughts become feelings, they become emotions. So the future sometimes is full of worry. As Reverend David Bruner used to say, worrying is rehearsing. So anxiety is rehearsing. Self-doubt is rehearsing. I like to think of, so that's rehearsing something in the future that we don't want. And I like to think of the future imagination instead as painting. So what are we painting? Are we painting darkness into our canvas? Are we rehearsing that onto the play that we're writing called our life? Myrtle Fillmore had something really cool to say about anxiety, and I've said this before. In her letters, Myrtle Fillmore says, "What do you think you can accomplish by being tense or anxious, or even by strenuous personal effort? It is God who does our thinking and our work, and surely God does not find it necessary to become anxious." Now, I know you can listen to that and you can think, it sounds like she's talking about God outside of ourselves, but no, let's say she's talking about the divine essence that we are. So that divine higher David, that divine higher Don and Deanna and Margot, and that divine higher you doesn't have anxiety, doesn't know anxiety. The divine wise sage you doesn't rehearse anxiety. So why should we? So what is the solution to the problem of, living in places that don't exist, right? Memory, imagination, they don't exist except in our mind. We're not living, when we're living here and we're living here, we're stealing from living here in this precious life. And the classic wisdom is to let go. We say that often in the New Thought traditions, especially during this time of fall. But this teacher, Sadhguru, says, no, you cannot just let go. You people in California, you cannot just let go. It doesn't work like that. He says the brain doesn't work that way. So that interested me, and I'm going to try that logic on for a moment. He says the brain does not subtract and divide. It only adds and multiplies. So he says you can't take things out of the brain so easily, but you can add things to the brain. So in my mind, and he also says the brain has a throttle, but it doesn't have brakes. It's the same concept. The brain can do plus, but it can't do minus. So if you'll roll with me for a minute here, better put, I think he's saying that we must change our relationship with our past and future in our own minds so that we're doing plussing instead of minusing. And one of the ways to do that, coming back to New Thought wisdom, is affirmation. Our New Thought wisdom would agree with Sadhguru, saying that plussing is better than minusing, because you've heard of affirmations. They typically begin with I am statements, but they can also be statements of truth, right? There is only peace, there is only joy. I am full of peace. I am love embodied, right? Those are affirmations. But then there are denials. Things like this hate shall have no power over me. And so if we listen to Sadhguru saying we should be plussing instead of minusing, he's agreeing with Myrtle Fillmore and her teachers by saying that affirmations are stronger than denials. Or if you begin with an affirmation, do a denial, but then always end with an affirmation. So I'll give you an example. Affirmation, I am peace. Peace happens and begins with me, is more powerful than saying, these thoughts of war and hate don't have any control over me. Why? Because why are they more powerful than saying that? Because when you say these thoughts of war and hate don't have any power over me, they say you're focusing on the war and hate. You're repeating war and hate. All this war and hate, all this war and hate doesn't have any power over me. All that war and hate and this. Oh, and did you hear about this that happened in the news? That doesn't have any power over me either. So you're stuck in what you don't want. So that's the beauty of an affirmation. You are only focusing on what you do want. You are only plussing. So if it's love and peace that you are after, claim that as yours and don't mix it with thoughts and words of hate and war, according to Sadhguru and Myrtle Fillmore in agreement here. And the best way to add a plus into our lives is to make sure that we're doing it in a way that puts us in the present. So I've jotted down a few ways that we can plus our lives instead of minus our lives, and live here in this space instead of here in these places that don't exist. Some of you may have seen this video by Connie Habash. It's on our Facebook, Unity Facebook page, where she's just simply sitting out in nature. She's sitting on top of a creek and she's totally in her bliss. And she's not talking about the past. She's not talking about the future. Someone just put in the chat, tapping takes you from a minus to a plus. Yeah, absolutely, tapping, because you're saying, I'm here, I'm here. You're physically tapping into your key energy and your chakra energy, just reminding yourself, you know, I'm here. So a walk in nature, that's one way to do it. But you've heard that from me so many times. I'm gonna talk to you about a couple of other scenarios. Now let's suppose that your past or future are pulling you into drama. It could be an argument that you had with someone yesterday. It could be just whatever it is, pulling you into this vortex of drama, a bad vortex. And the best advice I've ever heard in terms of neutralizing this argumentative state, this state of frustration, is to be neutral, You may not be able to plus it in that moment, right? Or maybe your plus goes over their minus and makes it as makes it neutral for those mathematicians out there. But be neutral is the best advice I ever got from someone. I was in a relationship at the time, and they said, David, every time you fight with that person, it draws you in. It draws you in, and it ends up resulting in exactly the opposite of what you want. It's like a Chinese finger trap. When you resist it, it just tries harder. So don't get involved in this emotional fight, no matter what it's about. For those of you who read the Power Path, they said that in a crisis is a particularly good time to choose neutrality. That's where our power is. And you know, there are some things that may make you ruminate and worry, but if you come back to neutrality, that's a place where you can have equanimity, which is a word I didn't grow up with. Equanimity. Did you grow up with that word? I didn't grow up. I had to look up what that word meant. It means kind of being unflappable. It means being calm in the storm. So another tip that I discovered is, if there are things that are pestering you about your future or your past, little things that are pestering, tempting you to ruminate or worry about them, use this principle by Stephen Covey. I forgot the name of his book. Maybe someone can put it in the chat. And that principle is, treat them like ants. Ignore them. Don't feed them. Don't comment. And I think this goes back to neutrality. The ants will go away if you don't feed them. So if someone is trying to emotionally hook you in, ignore their pleas. Don't react. Just say, I have some friends that do that with me. They just kind of, you know, I can hear them kind of get quiet, and they don't want to buy into my drama story. It's a great lesson. Don't feed the ants. They will go away on their own if you don't feed them. So this week, I had a team meeting with my growing team at work, and I was worried. A few days before the meeting, I was just worried about all these little things. What if? And I one day before the meeting, I decided, forget it. I'm just not going to worry about these things, and I'm going to paint a picture of something positive in that meeting. And it was simply us laughing together. And all but darned, that meeting was the most wonderful meeting in the world. We were all kind of laughing together. There was this icebreaker moment, and we all just genuinely enjoyed each other's company. And I just thought, how much time did I spend worrying about that meeting? So I allowed the present moment to expand instead of letting my future worries that don't even exist anywhere but my own mind. These future scenarios that I was rehearsing were hijacking all the good. They were hijacking my present moments. My present was looking like this, smaller and smaller and smaller, because I was living out here in a place that didn't exist. One more story. I have this little back issue, and they want to take an MRI of it, and that's going to be next week. And I've been thinking, gosh, I'm kind of worried about that MRI going up in that tube, that narrow tube, and what if I get nervous and claustrophobic, and what if that what if they put me all the way in the tube with just my feet sticking out, and what if it's really dark in there? And can you hear that thinking? And what if they can't hear me if I say, well, I want to get out? And what if I start to get nauseous? And I was thinking all these things. Now, I've had MRIs before, and I was thinking, how different is that from me being in bed and pulling the covers up over my head? Those covers are much closer to me than an MRI thing would be. And I'm not claustrophobic in bed because I'm in control, okay? So the things and the worries, the stories about the MRI, there is no harm that's coming to me. There is nothing bad that's happening that moment other than a boy afraid of dark places, or whatever claustrophobia is in that moment. So it's interesting. I'm going to assess how many hours I have to worry about this event that doesn't last an hour. And when I get there, I mean, I've had MRIs before. They were fine. So that's a perfect example of me kind of getting to exercise this next week. So we must be in this middle space that I think some of you maybe by now are thinking, oh, this sounds like the power of now, as Eckhart Tolle would say, the power of now, this place of what lives here. Joy lives here. Authenticity lives here. Your true power lives here. All possibilities live right here. This is a place with no judgment, because judgment relies on information from the past and assumptions about the future. This is a place of no fear, because that relies on information about the past, which doesn't exist, and projecting that into the future. So this place here has no fear. It's beyond the luggage of my past, and it's beyond the rehearsing scary imaginations into my future palette, the future that I'm painting. So if I can live the way I want to live in the present moment, it becomes this eternal present. I'm always in the present, always in the present. Myrtle Fillmore had, I found this last night. It was so wonderful. By accident, I was flipping through and I found this writing from Myrtle Fillmore about the eternal now. And she says, keep your soul open to the shining light of truth. By denial of the past or future and its claims upon you. So she's talking about keeping your soul open to the truth, which is right here, and denying the past or the future and the claims that they have upon you, because you, I'll go on quoting her, because you live in the now. Affirm the now as your only active eternity. Affirm the now as your only active eternity. So shall truth descend in full power upon you, not divided by past memories or future desires, but bursting with present fulfillment. So she, like Sadhguru, is saying, no, there's no division. It's only addition. It's only present fulfillment when you let this truth descend upon your present moment. And then finally, she says, no mortal lie can creep into the glory of the ever-present now. No cloud of doubt can hover over such a present certainty. Okay, so what does she mean when she says no mortal lie can creep into the glory of the ever-present now? It means that there are lies that society tells us about we're not good enough, and therefore we tell ourselves these stories. There are assumptions that we are tragically interpreting or tragically misperceiving about ourselves or about a situation, and those are mortal lies. There are things that we're worried about in the future that are mortal lies. They're not the truth. They're just our imagination. So she says, no mortal lie can creep into the glory of the ever-present now, right now in this space. So I'm going to end before I pray. I'm going to end with a practice that Sadhguru says is both a simple yoga practice that we can all do right now, and a simple meditation practice in one. And this will only take less than a minute. It's basically taking your right hand and your left hand and putting them together in front of you. And both he and Eric Butterworth refer to this as namaskar, but this is also the same word where the women's group gets their name, namaste. But we are just going to be thinking or looking at something we appreciate. Thinking or looking at something we appreciate. It could be our pet, a loved one, ourselves, a tree, the sky, our house. Simply letting that appreciation magnify. Letting the right hand and the left hand symbolize being right here, right now. No memory, no past, that's gone. No future, that is not yet happening. That's just our imagination. The sacred, sacred now. This is where our full power is. Just let ourselves feel that and let it just feel the grounding and the solidarity of that, like a tree, a huge tree that's not shaken, a huge tree that has equanimity, unflappable in the storm. So let's pray. Don't suffer your memory. Don't suffer your imagination. But let's shine a light on the past for a moment. And when we shine a light, any negative things that we see there become invisible. They become neutral. And we only choose to see the good in our past and in our future so we can focus on the present. So what are you appreciating in this presence? What are you plussing? What are you adding to? What are you magnifying with this great appreciation? What is this eternal now for you that is only true for you? Everybody has this unique heart, the unique you. So what is that? I declare that it's a place of joy. It's a place of love. It's a place of power. It's a place of authenticity. It's a place of possibilities. It's a place of no judgment. It's a place of no fear. At the center of your being, you have the answer. You know who you are. You know what you want. So there's no need to worry. It's all here. And wherever we are, God is, and all is well. And so it is.